10 seconds. Game on. Towel, towel, towel. Point approved. Thirty seconds.
Moved by A-Rod and maybe a lapse in judgment there by Smotroff. And Ronholt's going to walk off with the first point there.
Next up, we have Houston Heat versus Stockholm Ignition. I'm liking the gold on Ignition this year.
Yeah, I think that's actually the remix to Ignition with the gold over there.
All right.
Yeah, those jerseys are fresh out the kitchen. And it looks like Heat is going to start with Chad Yaya in the center. And Fedorov coming out to this wide snake side as his hopper opens. Heat's going to lose their wide Dorito player as Ignition looks like they're going to make all their spots alive, including the snake, including the Dorito 3. I'm sorry, and Fedorov gets into the snake. And it is a 5-on-4 here with players mirrored up in the snake, except for Ignition having the advantage there on the Dorito side.
Yeah, I'd like to see Ignition really get some control here. At a couple of points right there in the beginning of this game, they were all looking at the Dorito side, kind of left Fedorov over here to work by himself. You saw him walk into the snake there. As they drop their first player, they need to gain control and keep advantage in that high body situation.
And Chad George takes advantage immediately of that kill on the snake side and fills out to the snake corner. And the Ignition player in the center is trying to hold Fedorov in the snake, at the snake one as far back as he can, and his teammate gets up into the Dorito 4. He's getting checked right now, and he's called clean. I think Fedorov bounced him there. The Stockholm player in the tower is doing a great job containing Heat on this side and letting their players push up that side of the field. I'd like to see the Ignition player in the snake producing a little bit more, as there's no one shooting the gap, stopping him into snake 3, and here he's going to take that now. And I believe Chad George saw that, but either way, this player's down on the wire and can control Fedorov and Chad a little bit better.
Yeah, you can see Mishka over on Houston Heat's Dorito side of the field in that aspect, looking across, trying to control this snake player, who actually, unfortunately I don't recognize his name, but I saw him do a lot of damage with the last event of the snake, so it's nice to see him up.
He's not getting much help in a 2-on-1. This is really going to come down to Ignition's Dorito side. I think that the Heat is doing a great job controlling him from Fedorov and the snake, but again, no one's really stopping him from going to the Dorito 4 except for the back center, so he's in a 1-on-1 in that gunfight, and the ref's going to go in and check that Dorito 4 for Ignition right now, and again call him clean. And Ignition, although they're up in these spots right now, it seems like their players don't quite know how to continue pushing. Their center guys are still on a hold, and their front guys are looking to push without much help from the guys behind them.
Yeah, this is something we talk about a lot. You know, you see Fedorov right now crawling around in the snake, hunting for shots, trying to produce a kill, bring his team back in the game. When you're watching now Stockholm, who has the advantage in the bodies, just locking up, waiting for Kusanich to make a mistake. That's the difference in the personnel.
Absolutely, and with 4 pods, being able to lock down this field isn't going to go on too much longer here, as I think that the Ignition player in the tower controlling the D side has loaded his last pod, and Fedorov right now is looking to take, and he gets shot by the guy who's been on him the whole time. I think that was a lapse on Fedorov. He got a little too impatient there, and Ignition is going to be up on 4-on-3 here. Ignition player on the Dorito side now trying really hard, and he gets a shot on Mishka as the 2, so now a 2-on-4. And the Snake player on Ignition is starting to probe now, putting a lot of pressure on Chad George. He's probably going to be the next person to get pinched out of this game. And
Ignition finally kind of starting to put things together here. You hear the communication start to fire up. They're getting back on their feet, trying to close out this game now that they have the 2-body advantage.
Absolutely, and the 2-body advantage in burning a 5-minute point is going to be a huge start to this game. Ignition now onto the Heat side of the field, really putting a lot of pressure on Chad George. As long as they don't get any stupid deaths and gun battles here, they should be able to close this out. And there goes the back center for Houston Heat, and you can see that that's a good concede by Houston Heat. It might have been able to happen a little bit sooner, but again, you want to give your 2 stars out in the back there a chance to win that 2 and 4. We've seen that happen a few times on this field. And a Ronholt Blast and Red Legion coming back onto the field, with Ronholt being up 1 point against Red Legion with 13:12 on the clock. A lot of game time, so let's see how Russian Legion answers back here.
Yeah, Russians actually going to change up their line as well. Just the 1-body switch for Kirill. They now put in Denis Golev.
Yeah, so Golev in for Krill, probably playing the center there. I'm going to guess that they're going to put him up into that, maybe the tower on the Snake side to lock off that Dorito side. And again, with Karslev lining up on the Snake side, letting Britnikov being the 1 over there on the Dorito side. Looks like they're playing him alone over there, allowing Sergey to go up into the 40 brick on the Dorito side. A-Rod playing in dead zone, and it looks like Britnikov got bounced on the pack as Ronholt loses their Dorito side corner. Britnikov gets bounced in the corner. Russian Legion losing Golev out of the back center, and Smotrov goes back into the back center.
Now some counter punches coming up the middle. Sergey making his way up to that 40 break, shooting towards the Snake side, trying to lock that down, while Ronholt answers by coming up from the center tower and locking down the Russians' Dorito side.
And it looks like they're going to rely on Sergey and Karslev to lock down this Snake side, as Smotrov side through the Ronholt player's gun, and A-Rod gets shot in the back, and it looks like that's a blown side for the Dorito side. This is probably going to be only about another 30-40 seconds, but Smotrov takes a shot. Although Britnikov's still up on Ronholt's side of the field, the Ronholt players are pretty contained. Just 2 bodies alive versus 3 on the Snake side. Karslev not applying any pressure on the outside to these players.
But Sergey shoots Malloy.
Sergey shoots Britnikov. It comes to 2-on-2, but as and that's the last player for Ronholt, and it's going to be 2 bodies left alive. So even though Russians gave Ronholt a little gift there with Sergey shooting Britnikov in the back, they're still going to win this point with 2 bodies, and it looks like they're going to walk it in, tying up this game with a little over 11 minutes left.
Definitely a little chaotic for the typical Russian Legion that we see. You know, you see Sergey shooting Malloy out of Ronholt's Dorito. Guys dying out of the backfield. It looks like they're still getting their feet under them after that last Houston Heat match.
What was the score of that last match?
See, I don't know, and to be honest, I didn't get a chance to talk to the players before we came up here, but I thought I'd be able to tell. I thought when we got up here, we'd be like, oh yeah, that team looks confident, that team looks like they just lost the game. But it hasn't shown yet.
Interesting. And what would be the telltale signs of a team losing a game there that you'd be looking for? I mean, Russians would look a little bit chaotic right now. I think that some of the moves that Smotrov have been making have been rather reckless compared to his teammates. It doesn't seem like an even push, and would that be something that you'd be looking for?
Absolutely. I mean, that might be a sign that the Russians won that match
10
because
seconds.
they feel like they can get away with a little bit more. But I was more watching player body posture. You can see him little head down. It's the end of the day, maybe just coming off a loss. You start to see it in the way guys walk, how they hold themselves, and it's a good thing that we're not seeing that.
And it looks like the Stockholm Ignition Snake player gets shot off the break, and their Dorito side corner takes a check. Houston Heat 5 bodies up, and Ignition only with 3. And I believe their center player got shot in the loader, leaving a 3-on-5 for Houston Heat as they come streaking down the field. They're putting a lot of pressure on the Dorito side over there. And opposite to the last game, even though they just went up 2 bodies, all of their players are now taking a re-look at what situation they have on the field, and being able to slow down the game with 5 bodies on 3 is going to really force Ignition here to either push into their guns or wait it out to a point where they're going to have to concede.
Yeah, we're watching these points start to break down as like what we always call Sunday paintball, in that it's the initial 10-second chaos, that breakout to see where the bodies come off, and then a lot of read and react until the game slows down. But the Ignition player putting a ball on Chad George, but while Chad Yaya runs through and clears out the center player.
It is now a 3-on-1 with the Snake player. He's going to take that point, and that was really a good ending to that point for Heat, the way that they played that. Chad saw the third to last body die off that Dorito side, and then took advantage to take out that center player who was holding up Chad George, even though he got shot there. There's just too many bodies for the Ignition player and the Snake to peel off there.
I like the way that Heat mixed it up from that first match. They switched up their personnel a little bit. They switched up the positioning. You see Nish got up in that 40 brick. It's nice to see him changing up instead of falling into that trap of, oh, this is our play that works.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that this is a really dynamic field. There's a lot of different things and places you can go on both sides, and that really makes for an exciting match, and especially when you're playing a very a more complicated chess game than a typical, you can only go to these 5 spots with a high percentage, and this is how everyone's going to play it. So this is really going to be coaching breakouts versus breakouts, who's getting those shots off the break, and this is a really exciting field. So both these matches, Ronholt, Red Legion, 1-1.
You can tell it's exciting because we started commentating this match like it was soccer. Oh, he passes to him and he makes a move up the field. Everything's happening quick.
Huge kill for Red Legion there as they take A-Rod off the field out of the center, but Smotrov dies out of the Snake, and Sergey gets shot out of the middle. So now we're at a 3-on-3, complete trading back and forth of bodies. If I were going to give an advantage, I would probably give it to Russian Legion right now, as they have one player controlling the Dorito side and Britnikov controlling the Snake side over here, and they're allowing Karslev to be free gun. There's not really anyone controlling him right now, so he's going to be able to probe and look around and probably put pressure on the Dorito corner of the, and yes, he gets a shot on the Dorito corner of Ignition, and now it's at a 2-on-3 with Russians with field advantage, body advantage, and Britnikov starts moving up the field. Ronholt does some damage control getting out to the Dorito side, but he dies going out, 1-on-3, and this is probably going to be the point here. Russians do a good job learning from their last one, controlling it, slowing it down, talking to each other, and finding where that last body is. And Britnikov gets that running and gunning shot on the last player in the Snake.
Of course, it's a 3-on-1. He shoots him on the run.
Yep, and I saw the paint hitting the net right behind him, so that was a close one for him. So this 1-1 game with Houston Heat and Ignition with 9 minutes and 40 seconds. A lot of time for points. Greg, do you think that these are going to be some slow points and we're only going to get to see 3 more here? Or are we going to get another 5-6 points in this almost 10 minutes?
I think we're going to see another 5-6 points. There's been so much chaos at the beginning of this match, especially between these two teams. There's been so much read and react, like I said before, and I don't think either team is really known for slowing down. So I think you're going to see that first body come off, and both teams just swinging for the fences.
I like it. Swinging for the fences. Let's go. Let's see who connects on that swing. Looks like Ronholt loses their first body out of the two bodies off the break, out of the Dorito side and the Snake side too, and Brian Moorhead comes barreling down the Dorito side. He's going to get 2 more kills, and that is a very quick point for Houston Heat as Ryan Moorhead comes and roasts the last few players so fast that Chad George did not know the game was over, but Ryan safely behind the back center hits the bunker, hits the buzzer.
It's like I can read the future. Yeah, that was a great point. As dynamic as this field is, what happens in those scenarios is that there isn't the opportunity to have 2 guys doing the same job. Because there's so many options, you have to try to cover as much of the field as you can with your 5 players. When the can player on Ignition died shooting the cross shot on the Dorito side, it opened up the floodgates for Ryan Moorhead. He capitalized. He was lucky enough to shoot the Dorito 1 off the break, and by then, like I said, it's like opening the floodgates.
Absolutely, and when those 2 deaths, the 2 guys that can really control that side die quick, and a player like Moorhead realizes that those are the 2 most likely spots to be able to slow him down. Taking advantage before the other team even realizes that their players have died off the break is exactly how you should be doing it. So that was a great point by Ryan, and a really quick one for Heat. Russians come to the board again with Karzalev starting on the Snake side, and Grail this time in the center. And it looks like Karzalev dies out of the Snake off the break. Ignition, all 5 bodies make it. Nope, they lost the Dorito side corner, so that might be the 3rd time that the Russians have shot that Dorito side corner for Ignition. And it seems Ignition is rather trapped in the back spots in the center, whereas the Russians have the Snake and the Dorito too. That's going to put a large pinch on those players, turning their guns out wide and allowing the center players for Russian Legion to be able to stand over the top like Sergey's doing, and he gets a shot on the Ignition player in the center. A-Rod fills out to the Dorito side corner, takes a shot, and it seems like the rest of the players are trying their best to try to control some of this chaos that's going on. And it turns into a 3-on-2 with Russian Legion having 3, and again with position on the Snake side and the Dorito side, and it's now a 1-on-3. Russians are going to take this here. Good job on Ignition's part for scrambling and re-establishing those outside spots. They got 2 kills off of that, but just a little bit too much Russian Legion, a little bit too many Russian Legion to peel off enough bodies to really even up that game.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see how these games are playing so differently from what we saw this morning. What we saw this morning was guys making the Snake corner, making the Snake, making the Dorito corner, and only putting 1 guy up the center on a delay. We're watching all 4 of these teams send 1 or 2 players up the middle and losing their wide runners. So just a totally different look at this layout.
Yeah, and it seems like both teams are also really making their shots on the wide guys. Yeah, as you said, I think that Dorito corner on both teams, both of these games have died 4 times off the break. And so Heat coming back out with the same lineup. And taking the risk for send Chad George to the Snake corner and Moorhead to the Dorito 2. Ignition loses their body on the Snake side, which is going to completely open up this Snake side for Chad George, although they do reposition back up in the center, able to control the Snake. And Mishka dies out of the break on the Dorito side. So we're now at a 4-on-4 with a pretty good stalemate. What Ignition's going to need to do here is control Moorhead down the Dorito 4, but he still gets there. They have a really good control on Fedorov and Chad from the center there. So Moorhead is really going to be the guy who's going to decide this for Heat. And for Ignition, those players shooting those cross shots, stopping Heat from pushing up into the Snake is really going to be the difference maker here.
I mean, definitely have to keep watching even after these matches finish, because it's only going to get better with the Nations stuff coming up later.
Absolutely, definitely tune into the Nations Cup after this set. We're going to go back into countries versus countries. I don't know, it's like a little mini paint war going on for the dominance of the world. And Ignition doing a good job controlling Fedorov. He's going to wrap on the Ignition player and try to put a little more pressure on him. The Ignition player from the Dorito corner makes a bad fill and dies out of that side, which is going to allow Moorhead to apply even more pressure on that Dorito side. He's shooting at the back center right now for Ignition, and although this Ignition player in the God bunker on the Snake side is trying to do damage control over there, it's probably time for him to start stop allowing Fedorov to wrap here. And Fedorov does a great job getting into the snake, and it looks like he took a little too much of a bite, and Ignition ties it back up, 3 bodies on 3 bodies. So it looks like the hold of Ignition did a little bit better of a job than Heat there, although they did lose that extra body. The Ignition player on the snake side takes advantage of that and gets in the snake. Not that he can help this player in the center too much. If this player in the center for Ignition runs that inside route and takes out Moorhead, although Chad's protecting it, it's not something he can do over and over again because he has to respect the Ignition player in the snake down the wire. So Chad right now is doing 2 jobs, and if Ignition starts to realize that, then they're going to be able to continue pushing up this field and take Ryan Moorhead, the one that's really stopping them from moving out of the center. So now all 3 of their guns are on Moorhead, and even though they're doing that, Chad George is playing a little safe in the back because he knows he has to protect Moorhead over there, and he's really the only one who can do it. The Ignition player in the snake now gets up into the 50 snake, and he could probably take 1 more. Chad Yaya is hunting for him in the center. He doesn't quite know where he is, but if this player crawls up into the next spot, I'm sure we're going to see Chad run him down in the snake. And the player in the snake gives away his position by pressing the body. He's trying to get a shot on Moorhead, but it looks like he's breaking paint from the spread on that pin in front of him that he was shooting. And he's really pressing into that spot, trying to get a shot over there on Moorhead, whether it be a bounce shot off of that brick or just a shot on his back. And Yaya's going to come up the middle here. I don't know about this. He stops in the middle, and Chad George makes a great move, but gets shot himself. And so now Yaya's going to take advantage here and trade, and now it's going to be a one-on-one with Ryan Moorhead in the back center of Ignition. I don't know if Moorhead quite knows what's going on. He's still shooting different ways, but he got the shot on the back center, and that's going to be the point for Heat. So that was a full back-and-forth battle, body for that point. And that's a huge swing, going up 3-1 against Ignition now with 5:46 left.
I mean, we talk about it all the time. 1 point in paintball is actually a 2-point swing, right? It could have gone to a tie game. Now they're down 2, and there's less time on the clock. It's just such a major hit to your pit, your team, your strategy going out to the game. So I mean, that was a big point for each team.
30 seconds.
Yeah, if there was any time for Ignition to call a timeout, this next point might be it, to try to reestablish, because you know what, their players are making really good reads on where to go after the chaos is happening. However, in the beginning, they're not really getting those kills off the break, so they might need to readjust their guns, and then towards the end of the game, they probably need to talk with each other a little bit better to put it together, because I think that they actually had better spots than Heat that game, but Heat, they outplayed them a little there.
Agreed. All right, back to the Russian Legion versus Ronholt Blast.
So they send Barytnikov all the way to the Dorito 4, and he makes it, and Karslev takes advantage of all the guns switching that way, and he's in the 50 snake. So Russian Legion is way up the field here against Ignition. Ignition loses a player on the snake side, and to be able to fight back from this is going to be quite the feat as they lose the body out of the center. It's now a 3-on-5 with Houston Heat, or sorry, I keep saying that, Russian Legion way up the field. And now Ignition, only 2 bodies trapped over there on the Dorito side, and then A-Rod gets a great shot over here on Smotrov, although making it a 4-on-1. It looks like Russian Legion's going to walk away with this.
Yeah, Ronald's going to go ahead and hit the button on that one, try to save the clock a little bit.
Point approved.
You could definitely see the language barrier taking an effect there, because as Karslev crawled into Ronholt's side of the snake, you see the player on the snake side just start to freak out, like, our snake, and A-Rod didn't even react, had no idea what the guy was saying.
Maybe he did know, and he was real confident about it.
Maybe.
30 seconds.
It's hard to tell, because he did read it and play it in a way where he was not on their snake, so I know what you're saying there, but maybe he just knew that he really had nowhere else to go except for live behind his gun there.
Could be.
And Houston Heat coming back out with the same exact line. Fedorov playing the snake side with Chad George as the 2 behind him. Ryan Moorhead as the 1. Ignition also with the same line. It looks like both teams are going to start with a player in the back center and 2 out to either side, as we've been seeing in the morning bracket. Neither team taking the center off the break except Chad George going to that 40 insert on the Snake side. Ryan Moorhead getting shot for his first time on the Dorito side over there, trying to take the Dorito 2. So Ignition up 5 bodies on 4. Actually, let's make it 5 bodies on 3 as Mishka takes a walk out of the 2 on the Dorito side. Houston Heat now has a blown Dorito side, and Chad George isn't quite aware, but he's in a great spot to try to slow down the push of Ignition. Ignition getting shot out of the Snake corner. Fedorov taking immediate advantage, getting up into the Snake, and that move right there is going to bring the game back, I think, for Houston Heat, as he is now down on the Houston Heat side with Ignition getting bodies taken off by Fedorov and guns switching that way, allowing back center Chad Yaya to fill out to the Dorito side, pulling some more guns. Ignition again doing a great job filling and taking advantage of this chaos, but Fedorov putting a great ball on the center player there, and another one on the last 2 players, and that's going to be the game. So Fedorov really getting that kill on the Snake corner and taking advantage. Completely turned that game around, whereas Ignition was probably up for the first 20 seconds of that game.
He saved the day.
Saved the day.
He saved the day.
Absolutely. And that's why you put Fedorov out there. He's known for saving the day.
Absolutely. I like seeing that from good players too, because there's this divide as to when is a good time to really force the issue. They were up points, time's on their side, maybe they're down bodies. He had to make that decision, and he really did force the issue. He put 2 guys in, ran out, shot the Snake guy on the fly, and then made the game happen.
Oh,
so
yeah,
it was great. Yeah, exactly, right? That was definitely...
I'm looking at that situation going, nah, you guys keep going, we're up points. So Fedorov making a hero play there.
Yeah.
And it looks like Krill's going to come over the top and up the back center. They're going to send Karslev all the way around the corner to the Snake, and he gets a shot on the center tower. But they also lose Sergey from Red Legion. Karslev all the way up into the Ignition side of the field, and no one knows he's there. He's going to peel off 3 bodies, make it 4 bodies. A-Rod trying to repossession into the center. Probably not going to be enough. 4 on 2, but the Ignition player on the Dorito side gets shot from the inside. That's going to be the point. So another very, very quick point by Red Legion, and a very aggressive breakout, sending players around both corners up into the inserts, into the Doritos and the Snake.
I mean, this is a problem that we've been seeing with a lot of teams all day long, in that if the player makes it into the Snake early in the match, if you didn't go as well into the Snake, he's coming all the way down and shooting multiple people before anyone makes an adjustment or even realizes that he's there.
Yeah, and those adjustments I talked about for Ronholt earlier, what I was saying about Ignition, I think this would be a great time for them to take a timeout and talk about where they're shooting off the break, because it seems like Russians are taking the spots that they want at will. The bodies that are dying are from early gunfights and seemingly overconfident gunfights by Russian Legion because their players are so far up, and probably even expecting some of those guns in the backfield to switch to their front players, but because Ronholt doesn't even know where those guys are up the field, those guns aren't switching.
Right.
10 seconds.
All right. I'm almost at my 6-point call here.
I believe that's 3.
Oh yeah, it's coming though.
It's coming. All right. Just under 5 minutes. Chad George taking the Snake off the break. He makes it. Ignition doubling up that Snake side can, not able to shoot Chad George off the break, even though they were shooting for that heavy. Still 5 on 5 here, and all of Ignition makes their secondary bunkers, except they lose one out of the center can, who was trying to go up to the Dorito side, and another on the Snake side. So Heat up 5 on 3 here, as Ignition pushing very hard down that Dorito side.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's almost, I know he's on the counter punch. He was really doing well, working his way up there, but now being in that 3-4, he's much more susceptible to getting bunkered out than he would be if he was just one back and helping the rest of the team work out Chad and work out better off.
Absolutely, and you saw the aggression and push by Ignition there. That's something that, in my opinion, might have come a little bit too soon. 4 minutes in the game with 3 points. I don't think it's time to make those quick moves. Fedorov gets shot in the head in the snake, but it doesn't really leave much. And they're probably going to call him clean. They do, and that's a bad luck there for Ignition, as Fedorov is all the way up in their snake, and he's going to peel off the rest of the players here, very kindly laying one ball on the back of the rest of the Ignition players, but it's not so kind on the other side, as the last player is about to get double bunkered there by Mishka, or is that?
And Ronnie.
And Ronnie.
Point approved.
Fedorov got lucky on that one.
He did, but he was very kind to that player who he had his back to, so, you know, it's... And again, you know, that sort of urgent push by Ignition, although they're down points, again, I think that came a little bit too soon, and now they've really dug themselves into a hole here, going down 5-1, and now they have to make that play. So maybe a little bit of a urgent pit, as you were saying, how it messes up your pit going down certain points. That flustered play doesn't lend to a lot of great moves.
Right, and honestly, regardless of where the clock is at now, you have to score points. So at some point, even if it's not the whole team running down the field, you almost have to throw that haymaker, that one wrench into the game plan, and hope that it works for you.
Ignition staying in the pit all the way until 5 seconds and running out on the field, but that doesn't matter because Russian Legion was already out ready on the start gate, and they send Karslev all the way up to the insert on the 50 snake side, and he's going to really lock down that Dorito side as he gets a kill over there, and now is hunting for the snake player for Ronholt Blast. Karslev fills the snake, and Russian Legion up 5-4 on body count. Now making secondary moves, applying a lot of pressure to the Blast player on the snake. It's actually hard for us to even hear how much they're putting pain on his bunker. So if we can't hear up here, I'm sure in that snake it's that he's having a hard time hearing his teammates as they're all getting peeled off the back behind him. And he's probably going to get bunkered here by Karslev in a second. So, who is this? Smotrov?
Yeah.
Smotrov really putting a lot of pressure on the snake player. That's great. As a snake player, he knows how hard it is to be in there. And Karslev's going to trade out with the snake player, leaving 1 player for Blast versus 3 on Russian Legion. And this time they actually take stock of who's left. And I think he got shot in the pack there. Yep. And so that's going to be another point for Red Legion, putting this game at 6-1. And is that a mercy roll?
That is a mercy roll.
That's mercy roll. So Russian Legion mercying with 6 and change on the clock. That is a quick, fast, aggressive game.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw and we mentioned a few of the mistakes that we were seeing. You know, guys running down the field by themselves, not working with the team, guys getting shot off the break. But Russian Legion just put such an onslaught of aggression out there across the board. You almost didn't have time to notice them because they were just applying so much pressure. They were getting those quick kills.
I mean, just the way my tongue feels right now, I know how fast those games were going, trying to keep up with all those moves and counter-punch moves. So Russian Legion looking really, really sharp in the way they know the field. And although they weren't getting all the kills off the break that you kind of expect from the way that Blast was running to certain spots, they still really, really made up for it in terms of counter-punch moves and repositioning.
Game finished.
Yeah, it was moving so fast. You did a good job keeping up with all the moves. I just kind of sat here and pretended I was just a spectator, man, telling the people what they need to know.
Yeah, you know, it's what happens when you become a paintball nerd. You know, you can keep up with it.
30 seconds.
So this game, similar situation, but less time. 5-1 for Houston Heat, but only 3.5 minutes on this clock. I think it's going to be a similar situation here. Houston Heat probably in a better situation than the Russians even were, even though they won that point. Being up 4 points and having only 3 minutes on the clock is going to cause Ignition to again push really, really hard and recklessly. And the way that Houston Heat has been repositioning and playing safe, it's going to be super hard for them to put 2-3 points on the board here. Ignition takes the snake off the break, and he's gonna make it. And Chad Yaya gets shot out of the center. Houston Heat loses 2 bodies out of the center and are out wide on the snake side here, and I actually don't know if anyone knew he got in here. Fedorov repositions in the inserts bunker on the snake side to try to control the push of Blast on the, Ignition on the Dorito side, as the Dorito player gets shot out of Houston Heat's side of the field. Being a 4-on-3, Ignition trapped over here on the snake side as their furthest player is on the can side of the center on the Dorito side. Ignition now taking a little bit more time, and I think that this is how they should have played the last point in the pace. As their snake player doesn't quite know where Red Fedorov repositioned here, he can come all the way down to Houston Heat side of the field and try to get a shot on Chad George in the snake side can, but Chad George putting a lot of pressure, unknowing where this snake guy is in all of the spots where he could be crawling.
Yeah, I've actually seen this exact same player because I watched him before. He was playing great, but he did the same thing. He got himself to the 50 and then stopped. He just started hunting around, waiting for the guy to react. When, like you said, he's got the ball. He can crawl down the snake and start doing damage. And
Ignition loses another player, the furthest player on the Dorito side. It's going to come down to Ignition's player shooting out Moorhead, and he does. Or sorry, that was Ronnie. As Fedorov made it all the way over to the Dorito side, and he's going to now try to take that push on the Dorito side, and he's going to make it into their Dorito. So Ignition trying to reposition again, trying to take Fedorov's gun away, and Fedorov again is going to play the hero here as he re-spreads the field. And now the Ignition player is all the way up, but I don't think he knows where Fedorov is. Fedorov looked for him, and he's going to get a shot on him here probably in a second. Now Fedorov calling our snake only, Chad George safe in the corner, and he gets a shot on the Ignition player in the snake. And you know, that aggression in the points previous to this, if we had seen that there from Ignition, it probably would have been a little bit better of an outcome in that last. Mercy 6-1, 1 minute left. Fedorov playing the hero in those last 2 games, repositioning all the way over to the Dorito side, taking Ronnie's job and leaving Chad George as the island over here.
And in all the hero moves, he was playing behind Chad and rounded or ran past Chad in every single one. Didn't want to alley-oop him, just said, hey, I got this.
Yeah, and that's why Fedorov's a great player to watch. You know, he really, really knows what's going on, and as long as he has players around him that he can trust to be consistently alive, he's going to do a lot of damage. And you know, that's what Houston Heat was doing there with Chad George, the ever-consistent 2 on that snake side now, even though he's moving back from the 1, and then being able to trust at least 1 guy on that Dorito side, even though that last point didn't go that way, to be alive, to allow Fedorov to find those moves.
Absolutely. I mean, those are some great, super aggressive matches to watch. I think we got to head down, start getting ready for our USA match.
All right. Peace, guys.
Thank
USA, see you on the field in 10 minutes.